And it's not that we're just going, yay, it's about Dunedin. You know, like when every tourist comes to New Zealand and the first question you give them is, also, what do you think of New Zealand? We're not doing that. This is actually a really good indication of what this government's about and how they're operating by again saying there's no budget for this. Okay, what's the budget? 3 billion. Will he show us the numbers? No. But last time it was like 1.9 billion. Where's the extra billion from? No. Sensitive. Can't tell you. 3 billion, too much. So can you show us your workings? No. I'm in the process of getting a whole bunch of clips of things Luxton has said. And I have one somewhere which I haven't loaded up yet about being the most transparent government of all times. I'm still looking forward to that Uffindale report there, Chewy. I'm still looking forward to that one. Here you go. This is only a 2-minute clip about, so what's happening is people are now jumping on board saying, show us your workings, please. And they're not doing it yet.
I'm as frustrated as they are. That's the Infrastructure Minister's response to the tens of thousands of protesters.
If you're frustrated, Mr. Bishop, why don't you accept our invitation to come on and have a chat about it? Because we haven't heard back from your office. We're in Dunedin. Be nice to hear from you.
Angry at plans to downgrade the new Dunedin Hospital. The government announced last week that the cost of the development had blown out to $3 billion and savings had to be made. But as Lisa Davies reports, the fight back is gathering momentum.
Yep.
Putting politicians on notice.
We're just getting started.
The next step.
Send an electronic postcard to the ministers.
Days after 35,000 rallied in anger, their battle cry ringing across the octagon.
The people of this region are hopping mad. They're steaming about this depreciation of the hospital that they've been waiting for so long.
There's a promise of a lot more pushback to come.
This project is in people's hearts, and they will not let it be messed with.
It's in Pete Hodgson's heart too. The former Labour Health Minister has provided governance on the project since the outset.
Lopping even one story off the new tower block would mean the new hospital would have fewer beds than what we have now.
Did you get that? That's a really interesting point, and good use of the word fewer, Pete. Taking one story off, just one story, and it's got fewer beds than the current hospital. Just one story down. That's it. Done. It's not as viable anymore. That shows the margins that they're already looking with, even though 500 clinicians have given these recommendations.
He accepts the hospital will cost over $2 billion, but nowhere near the $3 billion the government's suggesting.
They've been caught being deceitful, and I think they should respond to being caught by putting out other information that they have.
The Rust Review's sections on costings were heavily redacted, so the government has not offered proof that Dunedin Hospital was going to cost that much.
Could you imagine, Chewy? Like, I struggle to believe that they're just lying. I mean, because maybe I'm a bit naive, but I struggle to believe that they think that they could just lie and not get caught. I think that they'll have it worked out, and we're going to show you what Rachel Brookings said on Monday night in a second. I think they will have it worked out to costing $3 billion, but there'll be a lot of fat in there, or there'll be a lot of potential costs or whatever in there. Because I'm sure the chat's going to tell me I'm naive any second now, but I just get the sense that you'd have to be an absolute moron to think eventually these numbers aren't going to come out. So if they've just redacted things and they're just lying, I don't think they'd do that. I don't know. Would they? What do you think?
Oh, I would love to know what these guys are going to do.
Yeah.
Like, it seems to me that they're pushing the boat out and seeing what the public's reaction to, and they're like, oh shit.
Yeah, that's right.
Shit. We've really fucking cooked this. And for people to turn around and specifically go, no, we've almost immediately identified several puffed pieces of this where you've just padded the numbers. And then the arguments against them changing things is just coming back to things that they have said. They have made statements. They have made promises. And even people going, why would you stop building it when you've started building it? Just keep going. Just do it. It's like digging a hole and then going, oh, this is hard. I'm not
It's
going
not
to do it
that
anymore.
they've dug the hole, then they've filled it with foundations and they've put the pilings in place. It is a literal sunken cost already. Keep going. I mean, maybe a smart government would have just kept going and then maybe getting close to the edge would go, actually, that new part of that building, we're just going to seal that off for now. We're going to come back to that in 18 months. They just seem so stupid that they put themselves in this position. Although, Chewy, you might be right. They might have gone, hey, you know what? It was rough for a second, but I think we've squeezed past with these ferries. Let's try the same with Dunedin Hospital, see what happens. I don't think so. Let's get back to Aisha.
The government insists it's been as transparent as possible, given the costings from the contractor.
There you go. There's a good shot from up the top of the current building. Have a look. See, literal foundations done, everything, and the actual building they've built is off to the right of that image there.
From the
Actually, I think
contractor
that's an older image.
Really?
That's an older image. The bit that you're looking at there, that's where the currently, or the outer shell
no, you're
of
probably
the
right.
current building is actually done.
Yep, because that's where Cello is. So this is the current building, but now here is looks like this. It's got all the bits and bobs there.
contractor are commercially sensitive.
We're the ones who have inherited an absolute hospital pass from the previous government. We have publicly released all the information we have.
Not true.
He says one more document will be released in due course. The Health Minister posting on social media today.
That's not scaremongering, it's a financial reality. We don't have an unlimited pool of money.
But the leaders of the South
nobody
are
says that
planning
you
a
do.
face-to-face.
Various mayors from the region, they're steaming mad too, and they want to go to Wellington.
And this is good. You're now hearing it, mayors from the region, because this is not a Dunedin only hospital. We've been saying this all the time through, so it's good that the mayors are uniting around the region, 100%.
And make their position felt.
They're not willing to take no for an answer.
So there you go. There's the story, Chewy. And this is all about the costings, right? So why don't we just go back and have a look? We had the Labour MP for Dunedin, Rachel Brooking, with us on Monday night. And this is a clip which she talks about what the costings are, how they get to $3 billion. Let's have a look.
And now what we see is this totally fabricated number of $3 billion.
Yeah, what is that all about? Because you guys are saying, where's this number from? You guys are in the house. Those of us kind of morons out here just hearing you guys, we're like, well, yeah, we haven't heard either. How do we explain this? What are you guys thinking?
Well, there's this report here, the Rust report that was done with the Infrastructure Commission, and it's an absolutely fine report. But what it says is, it says some quite technical things about, maybe the government.
Oh, that's turned into Inception all of a sudden, hasn't it? Us watching something else. Good grief. And can I say, just a side note, the Rust report should have had an orange cover. I'm just saying, should have had an orange cover. Would have made much more sense.
The structure of the new build could change a bit, and maybe there are some risks that need to be considered some more. But then it says three things. It says, well, there's also these three issues that haven't been dealt with. One of them is the pathology lab.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is an extra 250 car parks. And what is and the third one is what happens with the existing hospital, so the old hospital.
Yep.
Does that have to be refurbished somehow? Does that get sold off to someone else? What do we do with that? And so they've saying, well, this could lead to a lot more money, but it might not as well, because of course most pathology labs are private already, so you can get private providers to pay for any additional buildings there. Car parking is often a private thing as well, and it's queried the need for 250 additional car parks.
So hang on. So that $3 billion is based on what could happen if we paid for the pathology lab, if we paid for the parking, and if we refurbished the old hospital to do something with it. That's the $3 billion. So in other words, if they sold the old hospital to a developer who turned it into apartments for students, there'd be no cost there.
That's right. That's exactly right. And if somebody else did the car parks, then nothing there is.
The other thing that I found interesting today, Chewy, is I did a bit of looking around on how much it costs, how much the car parks make. And I haven't got it with me, but I found an old listing. Someone was selling a car park building in 2021 in Wellington. Had 300 car parks. So not too far off what they're talking about, 200 and whatever it was, 50. $1.2 million a year it took in. So actually, you think about a 100-year hospital or even a 50-year hospital, that car park, if they built it themselves, actually you can think about paying for itself. Again, if you did sell off the old hospital to make into university apartments. There's actually income coming from those things they could as well if they wanted to. So even if they did build the car park themselves and got the income from it, sold the old hospital, turned it into apartments, that's actually that's a lump sum of money coming into them as well. I'm fascinated that the party of business doesn't really seem to know what they're doing with this, Joey.
Oh, it's remarkable. Okay, so there's been discussion in Dunedin for near 15 years that we need somewhere to put a decent 5-star hotel.
Yep.
And there's been multiple attempts to do it, and they're always in the wrong place. They clash with heritage buildings, or the wrong, the wrong type for the area, or whatever. And during this whole time, whenever someone put one of those plans out, I was always like, they're going to get rid of the old hospital at one point. It's right in the CBD. It's not near any heritage buildings that is really going to affect. It's a big site. That's where you put it. That's where you put it. It's prime real estate. The only cost of the government would be, I don't know, disassembling the building, but not a refurbishment.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. You have an entire city block that you can sell now. And exactly as you said, whenever they brought up car parking, I'm like, building a car park is a revenue maker.
Yeah.
Like, even if you went half of it is reserved for the hospital, for patients, visitors, and staff, the rest of it is making money. So if we don't have enough money to build the hospital, why don't we build in a revenue maker in it as well?
Yeah.
No, we'll let the private market do that. Okay. Fact is that there's quite a big car park not more than a block away from that hospital.
Yeah.
I use it every day. It's half empty all the time. It's brilliant. But yeah, it party of business, short-term thinking, not seeing any opportunities. It's great. They're still the party of business. Innovation, money.
I think what dovetails into this quite nicely actually is the idea about hospitals and what we're going to do with hospitals, because Health New Zealand, I think that means Lester Levy, is urging the government to consider allowing private sector to help build and possibly run hospitals. It's funny how this conversation's come out like in the same week that we're talking about what's happening in Dunedin. And I'll just say again, Health New Zealand saying this, Chewy. This story is actually from last night, but let's have a listen to wrap up this part of the conversation.
Te Whatu Ora Health New Zealand is suggesting the government considers allowing private companies to build and potentially help run...
Just remind me, Chewy, that Lester Levy dude, what's his background in?
Private healthcare, Pat.
Oh,
writing articles.
That's a coincidence,
about private healthcare and privatizing healthcare.
It's almost as much as a coincidence about an ex-tobacco lobbyist looking after tobacco laws and a former gun lobbyist being in charge of things like the gun registry laws. It's kind of, I guess we should be, I think we should be very grateful that people are using their past experience and bringing it into the public sector. So thank you, National. Well done. Well done.
I especially like the fact that he was part of a board and then they sacked the board and kept him on.
Yeah.
It's great. Like there's not so much a perception of a conflict of interest, but a 4-foot sign that follows him around all the time that says, I have massive conflicts of interest.
Massive something. Let's keep going.
Public hospitals. In addition to the new Dunedin Hospital, more than a dozen other large health projects are classified as having significant risks. Jessica Roden explains.
This was Nelson Hospital in the 70s. The same building still in use today. And up and down the country from Dunedin to Whangarei, the story is the same.
We are unbelievably cramped for space in the wards, in the ED, and in outpatient settings. So it's tight.
Dozens of hospital buildings are in line to be rebuilt or upgraded. Earlier this year, Health New Zealand told the minister, given the scale of the investment required, other financing arrangements may be needed. Build and lease back arrangements where private companies own the buildings would free up funds. They also floated public-private partnerships, saying they're widely used overseas.
PPPs is a whole spectrum of how the...
I'm glad they're starting to look to Australia to help them tell us what we should do. We should talk at some stage with this government about what Australia does with capital gains taxes and stuff, because, you know, if it's working over places like that, no, maybe we should look at it.
Public sector could work with the private sector from that side of it. So there are many different options in there.
I won't reiterate all the advantages and disadvantages. The most obvious is the freeing up of capital that the Crown can then deploy elsewhere.
Capital that's...
And remember, that capital to deploy elsewhere is landlords and tax cuts. So this is, I'll be honest with you, Joe, a little side note here. I've always been of the opinion that selling or keeping state assets, it's not actually a good or bad either way. It is, what's it going to be used for? So when John Key was in and they sold half of a bunch of things, they sold 49% in some power companies, and I think here in New Zealand as well. They were saying they were using that, and I can almost remember it word for word. They were talking about paint and refurbishment of hospitals, ironically, and of some schools. And so it was all very much things that we need to get done, which we need to get it done again in 25 years. So my perspective then was these state assets aren't worth selling because you're putting them into the money from that into a temporary solution. Like if you sell $1 million state house that's not impacting a family who's living there, and you can build 4 for it, there's a case to answer for. You can actually work it out. What are we getting for selling this state asset? Under the last government, we got jack shit for them selling 49% in a bunch of stuff. And I kind of think the same, whether it's a state asset that we own or we sell, it's what we get for it in return. In this situation, it appears like we don't get anything. We just give a big job to a private company, and then we pay them, 3x, 4x, what it costs for them to build as we lease it back over the following 50 years. That seems like an unwise idea to me.
Yeah, it definitely reeks of, we have some people waiting in the wings to make some money.
Yeah.
I don't think this is benevolent. I don't think this is a good line of inquiry to pursue. I think this is just death by inches in getting private healthcare into New Zealand. And it's been driven by people who have been very, very clear they want to privatize healthcare in New Zealand.
Yep. All right, let's see how this wraps up. 60 seconds.
Needed. Much to the South's dismay, last week it was revealed Dunedin Hospital will be downgraded after a budget blowout. But it's not the only large project
that they won't show us and won't commit to have the workings be made public.
With issues. As of March, 34 projects were green or on track. 22 projects were amber, meaning there are some risks, and 17 were red, meaning there are significant risks.
Well, it's a scarier number of projects that are at risk, and it's all about choices. The government needs to make the choice to invest properly in health infrastructure.
Many of the details of the red projects are redacted, but cost and scope are concerns for the Whangarei Hospital redevelopment. That's led to concern it too could be downgraded.
There wasn't any hardship quickly finding the money for tax cuts and benefits to landlords.
Bingo.
But now there is a great deal of trouble affording healthcare infrastructure.
And of course, just remember, we all know this, but the people who are more likely to use the public health system are the vulnerable and the poor, more likely to. So the private health system that's already in New Zealand is fine. People who can afford it, pay for it. Fine, all well and good. The people who can't afford it and the people who have no other choice but to use public health are the poorest and the most vulnerable. The people who aren't going to get refunds, reimbursements because they're not landlords, the people who aren't going to get big, massive tax cuts because they're not in the top 1%. So it's just another hit that'll eventually hurt the vulnerable and the poor more and disproportionately to anyone else in the community. I'll just do the last 10 seconds in case there's something true, then I'll step back and let you explode.
I mean, that's the irony.
While the minister opened a new children's ward in Rotorua today, there doesn't seem to be a lot else to celebrate. Jessica Roden, One News.
All right, sir. I've had my chip go. You have a go. Yours, sir.
I love that you're talking about, yes, the poorer, more vulnerable need public health care.
Yeah.
I was watching the working group last week, and they had, what's that guy's name? CB from Voyager, the guy that self-created rich man, that sort of thing. He was going on about the fact that he had to be rushed to Middlemore or one of the Auckland hospitals anyway, and it was absolutely raving about the fact that he got really well looked after, and they're doing hard work under difficult conditions. I was like, motherfucker, you sit there saying that you don't you get taxed too much. You don't want to pay enough tax, and we should do more stuff like America. You had the option and the money to have private healthcare, and you're taking up a slot in a public hospital that you don't want to pay for.
Yeah.
I as you said, I'm always close to blowing a foo-foo valve. I very, very nearly blew a foo-foo valve there. I also like the fact that they're saying we need to look at what Australia is doing with public-private partnerships. Should we have a wee look at that, Pat? Should we have a look at how that's going?
It would be fair. It would be fair to look at it.
It would be fair, right? Because the Australians, they have some really good ideas, and we should really look at it. August 2019, abandoned public-private model at Northern Beaches Hospital. Doctors urge state government. This seems to be where we are now. Doctors have called upon the New South Wales government to abandon public-private partnerships. Thanks, the Herald, for popping that up. Blaming the controversial model for fundamental flaws, cost-cutting, and secrecy. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound just a little bit? Someone else is reading their head. So let's flash forward a little bit.
Yeah.
It's oh God, they're hitting me with a subscribe.
Is that the Herald?
They're hitting me with this is the Sydney Morning Herald.
Bastards.
Anyway, the headline for that: Healthscope's financial woes cast doubt on public-private partnership model. They owe the state millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that the state's not getting because it's got to go privately. And then also from this year, April of this year, hospital criticised over cuts. Northern Beaches Hospital come under fire from local MPs over cuts to services. Sydney Morning Herald report, which has not been challenged by the hospital operator Healthscope, said that the cuts would be made to nursing staff in the mental health unit, and that shifts would be cut from both mental health and maternity wards. Fantastic.
Yeah, they're not important at all. There's that, and those people who are pregnant or who have mental health issues, for too long, they've been getting it too good. So it's good we take them down a peg or two.
Yeah, and this is the thing. Profit focused organizations can't do healthcare. They can't. You can't monetize.
It's a service.
It's a service.
Yeah.
And this thing where they go, we've lost all of this money. It goes away in healthcare because the benefits to it are down the track. They're getting workers working and not being sick. People that are not working and sick are bad for the economy. But you will never make a profit out of a hospital unless you are doing something truly, truly evil. And we can look at the model. We can look at the pathway that other right-wing Tory fucks have done. The absolute hatchet job that the Conservatives did on the NHS is the roadmap. That's the aim. Our National Party had very close ties with the Tories about this sort of stuff. They've been reading their homework. We can see that it's been trialed and failed as predicted in our nearest neighbour. And then if you want the absolute gold standard of why the fuck we should avoid this, you look at America's healthcare system.
Yeah.
Where nothing is true. Everybody's clipping the ticket and nobody is getting the benefits for it. Some of the most expensive healthcare on the planet for the worst outcomes, unless you got a shit ton of money in your back pocket. And I really stress this, that I think New Zealanders would agree that if we're going to go down to that track, that is going to be what brings people out onto the streets.
Yeah, we saw that.
That is general strike time.
And again, it just reminds
want to bring this in.
It reminds me of how we often say on this show, name for me one right-wing policy, one piece of right-wing legislation that this country en masse holds on to like it does a bunch of left-wing ones. Social housing, public health, working for families, interest-free student loans, all bought in from the left. And now the country will go out and march for one of those left-wing policies, and we saw it on Saturday, We saw it on Saturday, a mayor in Dunedin who we criticised firmly for having his part of politics not agreeing with us, all the way from that through to blue-haired hippies on the other side, all in one voice, shouting and singing for a left-wing policy that this country will not let go of. And that's the difference in politics. It's the left make policy and the right respond to policy. I'm still going to put the challenge out there. Show me one right-wing policy, one policy that's been put in by a right-wing government that this country holds on to as a foundational thing that we all must have. You'll struggle. You'll struggle.